tell you it's recording. Zoom's new policy to tell everyone it's recording. So you grew up locally around the corner. Our parents are members, and ended up in Leeds, where I don't know if your intention was to stay there as long as you did, but you were there for quite a while. How many years were you in Leeds for?
6 years.
6 years. So I'd heard the name.
I studied there as well. I studied there for 3 years, so a total of 9 years.
So there you go. So there for 9 years. I was only there for 4, and I remember hearing the name Rabbi Miller when I was a student there in Leeds back in 2001, maybe 2002, around that kind of time. I think that was the time you must have been there in those days. What date did you leave Leeds?
2004.
Oh, there you go. So I didn't make it up. But the reason why some of you may have known, I'm actually going to, 1 second, make myself bigger for a second so I can show you all this chumash, which some of you, if not everyone, should recognize this chumash. So there is a copy of this in our shul as well. I think your parents gave us a copy, but this is being put together, written by Rabbi Miller. This whole set actually of chumashim, plus many, many other books on the Tanya. I think you've written something on the Tanya, on other Kabbalistic works as well, the more spiritual stuff than maybe we're used to spending time with. But this is a phenomenal chumash. This is one we have at home. So I don't get any commission from tonight, by the way. I'm just wanted to put a face to the book, because some of you will have seen this before. It's a beautiful work. And I'm not just saying that because he's here. I'm saying that because it's a beautiful work with translations and insights and really, really fascinating and expertly put together. So this is most of the time, I believe what Rabbi Miller does is he writes and teaches. And as soon as I found a link to our community, and we managed to connect as well, so we decided, why not ask Rabbi Miller to come and speak? And I thought in the run up to the 3 weeks, in the 3 weeks, in the run up to Tisha B'Av, we could have the opportunity to learn some Torah, to discuss together with Rabbi Miller. So without further ado, all the way from currently Manhattan, even though living in Brooklyn, I introduce you to the wonderful Belmont community, Rabbi Chaim Miller.
Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction, thank you. And it was not too short.
I can go longer. I've made you co-host in case you want to do anything funny.
And I can share my screen.
Yes, I'm gonna remove myself. Over to you.
I thought I got it, but these things take.
Can everyone mute, please, Arthur?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, it's lovely to be here. As you've just heard, I'm a London boy, even though I'm currently in America. I grew up around the corner in Kenton. My bar mitzvah was in Kenton Shul a few years ago. And so I thought you were going to tell the brief story, Rabbi Levine, how we got in touch. But
Go for it.
Actually, your Rebbetzin, Lisa, emailed me out of the blue. So they were reading my Chumash and not making the connection that my parents actually in your shul, just out of the blue, emailed me a question about the book. And so what a surprise. And so obviously I replied, we got in touch, and this is how this little gathering happened. So a strange turn of divine providence. So I've been asked to talk today about something rather serious, which, I usually like to keep things lighthearted, but we have a serious day upon us, the day of Tisha B'Av, which is on Sunday, beginning on Shabbat afternoon at sunset. And this is obviously a very sad day. It's really the saddest day of the Jewish calendar. Even though we've since had many other tragic events in Jewish history, such as the Holocaust, such as the Spanish Inquisition, such as the many, many unfortunate events, somehow, from a Jewish perspective, they are all summed up in the day of Tisha B'Av, because that was the kind of opening of all tragedies. And it's a day when we reflect not only in the destruction of both temples, but also all forms of Jewish tragedy and misfortune that have happened throughout the years. So it's a heavy day. And, as someone who I like to brush my pain under the carpet, I don't like to confront it usually. So I find Tisha B'Av particularly challenging to deal with misfortune and pain. So I chose this topic for today, which is overcoming adversity, because Tisha B'Av is not just about wallowing misery, even though it feels that on the day. We sit on the floor, we read the Megillah of Eicha, which is Lamentations, the Book of Lamentations, which are very sad work depicting some of the tremendous, horrific things that people went through. And there can be this feeling of just, kind of just being sad for the sake of being sad. And that's not really a Jewish idea. I don't believe that we go into this sad day just to mourn. I believe we go into it to become stronger as we come out. And that's why I picked this topic, overcoming adversity, because I think it gives us the strength as we go on past Tisha B'Av, that when we do encounter misfortunes and challenges, we're a little bit better equipped to cope with them. And so on that note, I thought I'd share with you some Torah, not just my own whimsical thoughts. And so there's an interesting piece in the Jerusalem Talmud, which discusses the response that the Jewish people had when they hit the Sea of Reeds, the Red Sea, when they were coming out of Egypt, finally out, all these miracles performed, the 10 plagues, they're leaving Egypt, and they hit a wall. I mean, it wasn't a wall, it was a sea, but they hit this, basically game over, they lost. That is a symbol of all adversity, all challenges. What do? So, as you know, you've read the story before, you've seen the film. One courageous individual jumped in, and then the sea split, and they walked through. But in the moment before the sea split, when they felt that there's this obstacle there, which is insurmountable, what did they do? So we actually have a little passage in the Chumash here, which I will pop up. Now, if I can pull off this technological feat. Share browser. You know what? Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, we can see.
Am I in the right place? That's the question. So basically, they all think they're going to die. They said to Moses, there are not enough graves in Egypt. You want us to die here. We should have just stayed there. They complained. And what is Moses' response? So this is verse 13 here. Moses said to the people, Al tira'u, have no fear. His yatzvu, stay still, stand by, that's the translation here. Uru'u es Yeshuas Hashem, and witness the deliverance of God. Asher yaseh lachem hayom, which he will do for you today. Ki asher re'isem es Mitzrayim hayom, for the Egyptians who you may see today, lo yisifu lireisom oid ad olam. You will never see them again. And then he continues, Hashem yilochem lachem, God will fight for you, va'atem tacharishun, and you, the translation is here, you hold your peace. Literally, it means you be quiet. just be quiet. And that was the response of Moses. Now, that's quite a long speech, and there are many elements here. And actually, if you divide up the sentence, there's 4 components to his response. First of all, he says, have no fear, stand by and witness the deliverance of God. And then he says, the Egyptians you'll see today, you'll never see again. Then he says, God's going to fight for you. And then he says, you hold your peace, you be quiet. It's really 4 separate sentences. And on that basis, hold on, how do I unshare this now?
You want me to do it for you?
Oh no, I've done it. I closed the window. Okay. So on that basis, the Jerusalem Talmud gives a very close reading of the text. And it basically presumes that there are actually 4 groups of people. And Moses is saying these 4 sentences to 4 different groups. It's quite a kind of marvelous insight. Because when you just read it for the first time, it sounds like he's just giving a speech. But as you know, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Actually, here there are 4 opinions as to how to react. So I'll pull this passage up for you, which I have in English. The Israelites, this is Jerusalem Talmud, Tractate Tanit. The Israelites formed 4 groups by the sea. One group said, let's jump into the sea. Not expecting that they weren't expecting a miracle, the sea going to split. That hadn't happened yet. They just said, basically, their response was, we'd rather die than go back to Egypt. Let's just drown ourselves. That was their response. Another said, let us return to Egypt. Let's go back. Another said, let's make war with them. Let's make war with the Egyptians. And another said, let us cry out against them, meaning let's daven, let's pray. And so the Jerusalem Talmud is going to prove this point, that there were these 4 views, by reading these 4 segments of Moses' speech. To the group that said, let's jump into the sea, Moses replied, stand by, witness the deliverance of God who will work for you today. So it's a bit like, do they have Jeopardy in England?
No, but I think everyone knows what it is.
Yeah, there's a kind of game show here in America where they give you the answer and you have to work out the question. That's how it works. And so that's really what the Jerusalem Talmud was doing here with the Torah. It's doing a Jeopardy. Moses is giving the response. So what was the question? What did the Israelites say? They had said, let's jump to the sea. So Moses' response was, no, stand, don't jump. Stand by. You're going to be saved. To the group that said, let's return to Egypt, Moses replied, for the Egyptians who you see today, you'll never see again. Another Jeopardy. To the group that said, let's make war with them, Moses replied, God will battle for you. Don't fight the Egyptians, God will do the battle. And to the group that said, let's cry out against them, Moses replied, you remain silent. That's interesting because they wanted to pray and Moses told them, don't pray, which is kind of surprising, really. So that's an interesting passage, interesting reading of the text. Now, what you have here really, just to kind of delve into it a little bit more deeply, you have 4 responses to adversity. The sea is the great symbol of adversity here. We've all hit walls in life. We all get to the point where we just cannot see any way forward. That is what the sea represented to these people. It's a wall that they cannot penetrate. So what are we going to do? So one response is, let's jump into the sea. And that means basically, we're not giving up. We're going to power through this. We don't see any way forward, but we're just going to keep going. And that is so very often our response. When, God forbid, there's illness, God forbid there is poverty, God forbid there's any sort of setback, someone's losing their job, what do? Most of the time, we just gather our strength and continue. We don't know how it's going to pan out, but we're not giving in. It's the refusal to give in. So let's jump into the sea was basically the message. We're not giving in to the Egyptians. We're just going to go forward. We don't know how this is going to work out. We're just going to hold on. So that's a courageous response. Now, the next response was, let's go back to Egypt. And that kind of, when you first read it, it's kind of a little bit of a cowardly response. The first group, well, we're never giving up. We're just going to go into the sea and something's going to work out. The second group is, this isn't working out. This whole leaving Egypt thing, it's not working out. Let's just go back because this was a big mistake. So it superficially sounds like they're giving up, but it's not. Because the way I read this is they're actually having a conversation with each other. It's not just 4 different opinions. And the second group is really talking to the first group. The first group says, let's go into the sea and carry on. The second group is saying, hold on, what's that going to gain? We're all just going to drown if we go in the sea. for all your bravado, we're not giving in, we're not holding back, you're just going to die. That's basically their response. Actually, if you read the history of the Jews of Russia from the early part of the 20th century, this was a great dilemma. Many of the great rabbis, talking about Russia after the revolution, early 1920s, nearly every great rabbi left Russia because they saw that under communism we're not going to survive, and the Jewish community is not going to survive, and we've just got to get out. A number stayed, a few individuals stayed, and tragically, what happened to the ones that stayed is they ended up either being killed, or eventually it was impossible to work as a rabbi in communist Russia. Because in the early 1920s, it was just the Jewish communists that were causing trouble. The Communist Party itself had not imposed the tremendous restrictions against religion and worship. And 25, 26, 27 onwards, then it became the Communist Party itself. And it became impossible to work. And then it became impossible to leave as well. And so that window of opportunity when you could leave had left. So what it turned out was those that said, let's just stick out, let's stay here, it's going to work out, tragically, didn't really work out. Whereas those that said, let's go back, in other words, let's give up. Let's go back to Egypt. Let's just give up on this plan of staying here. They actually ended up having their lives saved. So sometimes it makes sense to give up. Now, what I believe the Jerusalem Talmud is saying here, it's not just simply giving up. It's reframing the situation. We need to reframe. What was the original plan? Jews come out of Egypt. We had the 10 plagues. It was wonderful. We're going to go to the promised land and we're going to receive the Torah. That was the plan. We've reached an insurmountable obstacle. So what are we going to do? We don't have to be fools and kill ourselves and go and drown in the ocean. Let's go back and work out. We'll reframe. We will rethink. And we'll find another way to leave Egypt. We're not going back because we want to stay there. We're not going back because we're giving up. We're going back because that's the only opportunity right now, rather than losing our lives. So going back to Egypt is actually very smart. It's not stupid. It means that when adversity hits, sometimes we have to say to ourselves, maybe we've got the wrong story here. Maybe we've got the wrong narrative here. Maybe I was going about this the wrong way, and I have to rethink my life. I have to rethink the way I'm doing things. Not just power through and everything's going to be okay. All right, so that was the second approach. A lot of the time, by the way, as you might have read in my bio, I was originally going to be a doctor and I was studying medicine, eventually ended up becoming a rabbi. But I'm still interested in healing, particularly the healing that comes from deep inner work. See, Western medicine is excellent at acute disease. So if, God forbid, you're in a car accident and there's blood coming out, you go to the emergency room, they're very, very good at patching that up. And anything that is kind of has a sudden onset and it's not a long-term problem, Western medicine is excellent. What's more challenged is long-term chronic illness. There are people in chronic pain for years. I suffer from headaches. Recently, thank God, got a bit better, but for many, many years, just almost every day, just awful headaches. And, no one knows the cause for these things because they're just chronic illnesses. And I believe that, mind, body, and soul are deeply interconnected. And which means that when, God forbid, illness occurs, it's time to rethink the way we're approaching life. Because, in the Western world, we live stressful lives, we live busy lives, and finding more inner peace, meditation, and just allowing ourselves to be in the moment and to experience every moment as a kind of precious breath of life, rather than, the anxious thought patterns of what are we going to do next, and what am I going to do next week, and what's this, when various conflicts with different people, to neutralize some of those anxious thoughts with positive thinking. That, I believe, in the long term, helps the health of the physical body as well. And so let's go back to Egypt could be reframed as, God forbid, an illness strikes. So let's start to rethink how we are spiritually and maybe even philosophically. How are we looking at life? Maybe we're just taking certain things too seriously. We're taking our anxious thoughts too seriously, and that's just weighing more heavily on the body. And are there ways of finding more joy in just the simple things? I recently took up walking. Everything I do, I tend to do obsessively. So I walk a ridiculous amount every day now, which is, it's not a terrible thing. It's just hard to get work done at the same time. But I just find it relaxing and meditative. And I never liked exercise. I was the kid that got the doctor's note, so I didn't have to go, play rugby. And we used to have these awful in school. Did you do rugby? It's like you have to put your head in a scrum. It feels like someone's yanking your head off. I never liked sports. But somehow walking, I just find it, I can relax and I can think. So let's return to Egypt. So let's rethink the way we're doing things. Maybe even though, we're not, when you're 10, you're 15, you're 20, you're always rethinking. But when you hit middle age, older age, it's harder to rethink the way you're doing things because you've always been doing it that way. But, I just turned 49. And I like to think I can rethink life sometimes. So let's return to Egypt. We cope with adversity by reframing the situation and making profound life changes, profound attitudinal changes to how we're going to deal with life's challenges. Now, let's go to the third group. They said, let's make war with them. These are the Israelites at the sea. They're stuck at the sea. The second group said, let's go back. The third group says, no, that's not going to work. We need to make war. Again, this is a conversation. The third group's talking to the second group. Going back to Egypt's not going to work. Why not? Because we just got out of there. That was the problem. You're going back into the problem. Oh, you think you're going to reframe, but one of the problems with reframing is it can be delusional. If you've ever started a diet and you're about to start a diet and then you say, well, I'm starting my diet tomorrow as I eat the piece of cake now. Yeah, let's see if you actually start the diet tomorrow. Sometimes that's delusional thinking. Going back to Egypt, reframing is fine if you can be objective. But when you've got out of the problem and then you're allowing yourself to go back into it, it's dangerous ground. So the third group says we have no option other than to fight. Tackle head on and eliminate hostility. And, this has an important role. Since the State of Israel was founded 70 years ago, Jews, thank God, have been able to be in this position where people fight us, we fight back. Used to be, we just went to the slaughter. Used to be, we were just wandering from country to country. Now, thank God, there's a Jewish state. And those who are unwisely hostile toward us and show aggression, we fight back. So that there is a role just simply to fight. There's hostility, we fight. Kind of makes sense. There's not a lot of commentary required. But the question is, why is that not the ideal? Why is there then a fourth group? Well, obviously, practically speaking, the Israelites, they came out of Egypt, there's 600,000 men, but total headcount with women and children is 2 million. They don't have any weapons, and they're probably not that healthy. They're all slaves. They've been maltreated, and the Egyptian army is probably one of the most sophisticated in the world. So it's almost suicidal to fight. So the fourth group has another answer. And what's the answer? The answer is, let's pray. or literally he said, let's cry out against them. Let's make a spiritual offensive. A physical offensive is not going to work because we're not equipped. Let's just face it, we're going to lose. But a spiritual offensive, where we say psalms, we go to shul, we try to do another mitzvah, we give to charity. These are all spiritual offenses that we hope will solve a very physical problem. And this can help. These things can really help. I heard a story from Dr. Kate Lowenthal, who, I don't know if she still is, but she was the head of psychology at University College London. And she told me that a remarkable story that she was counseling a person who had come on kinder transport to the UK, which is a lot of children were saved from Eastern Europe during the Holocaust through coming on trains, but they weren't accompanied by their parents, so they were orphaned. And obviously that's very tragic and very traumatizing. So in later life, she was speaking to Dr. Lowenthal, and this particular lady, she didn't connect with religion at all. She was Jewish, but she didn't connect with it. And she felt alienated from God, really. And so, as her luck would have it, her husband started becoming more observant, and he got involved with Lubavitch. And eventually, he had the opportunity to meet Lubavitcher Rebbe, which this is going back a long way, because these meetings stopped in the late 70s. So he had the opportunity to meet Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said to his wife, like, would you like to come along? And she's like, yeah, I'm going to come. I'm going to tell your rabbi what I think of his God, what I think of his religion, not coming as a fan. So they entered the meeting, and she went on this kind of rant of her frustrations and legitimate grievances, really. And the Rebbe said to her, it's good that you're angry, because anger is a connection, and you want to make that connection stronger. So what I recommend to you is you put a charity box in your home or your office, and every day you put a coin into charity. And she came out of the meeting and she was livid. She's like, I'm coming with serious trauma here, and he's telling me to put a coin in a charity box. That's it. But the end of the story is, I have this in an email somewhere. I don't know if I could share it with you, but a few years ago I received this. So Dr. Lowenthal said in the end, she said she did this charity every day, and it really had an effect on her. It really soothed her heart, because sometimes what we need is a spiritual cure. Sometimes what we need is not, physical cures we should also pursue as well. I'm not saying the spiritual should be done at the expense of the physical, but sometimes we need something that is that spiritually touches our heart, and that could be reading poetry. It could be meditating. But from a Jewish perspective, we believe that the mitzvot have a soothing effect on the soul. And it doesn't have to be, doing everything that Rabbi is telling you to do. It could just be a simple thing like putting a coin in charity, or observing an element of Shabbat, an element of kashrut, just a little bit extra, a little bit more connection that can be spiritually soothing. And that's really what the fourth group says, that sometimes making war with them is not an option. You can't fight the physical war. Sometimes a doctor will tell a patient, there's nothing I can do for you. And then what do you do? So we still have faith. We still have the ability to pray. We still have the ability to connect. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes that actually solves the problem. Why? Because when we go inward and we connect with our spiritual core, sometimes that can actually bring the healing that we're looking for. Sometimes that can be transformative. Just putting a coin in a tzedakah box. It sounds very mundane, but it can be transformative, because somehow ritual, the physical act of doing something with symbolic significance, somehow it reaches very deep into the psyche. And as I said before, mind, body, and spirit are so intrinsically connected. And it's a great mistake of the Western world to really separate them. You know, we go to university to study, we go to a doctor to make us feel better, and we go to a synagogue for religious and spiritual connection. But really, these three different worlds are really part of one and the same. And that's actually, I mean, not to go on too much of a personal amount, that's one of the things that one of the reasons I left medical school, though I always have an interest in healing, because I just felt it was too reductionistic. It was too much about, you know, treating the body like a car and different parts. It's a mistake to just treat one part of the body. The body is an entire organism. And even that, it's a mistake just to see the body as separate from the mind, and it's a mistake to see all of that as separate from the spirit. So the fourth group who wanted to pray, it might sound a bit pathetic when you first read it. Oh, that's all you're going to do, you're going to pray. But really what they're saying is that the deepest therapy, the deepest cure comes from the most holistic place that takes everything into account, including the spirit. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And how long are we doing this for? What is the? Are we doing questions or?
Sure, we can go. I'm sure people would be fascinated. Thank you for sharing that. How does that shimmy up with how Moshe responds to each group?
Well, basically, from the response, you see what the issue was. So the group to which he says, stand by, God's going to do the miracle. That's because obviously they were saying, we want to jump in the sea. To the group who he said, you'll never see the Egyptians again, that's because they had said, we want to go back to Egypt. To the group that said, God, he said, God will battle for you. That's because they had said, we're going to battle. And to the fourth group who said, to whom Moshe said, remain silent, they said, well, we're going to pray. And he says, no.
But what? But
I mean,
but let's understand each response as it goes. That's what I'm trying to say. So, so what you said was very beautiful. To each, so the intention of each group was quite sincere, lishma, you know, and but Moshe seems to kind of tell each group, he gives them an answer, but what's the parish of the answer? Like, why would he tell them not to daven?
Oh well, you see, if you read the story at the literal level, they're all wrong. If you just read the Chumash, you know, what he's saying, you know, you're wrong. I have something else in mind. But what I think the Jerusalem Talmud is saying, no, there's actually a legitimacy in all these four approaches. And the fact that the Jerusalem Talmud bothers to record these responses is showing that when there is adversity, there is a legitimate response. So it's a different kind of, it's like a midrashic type of reading where we're saying there's more depth here than the superficial story where they're incorrect.
And I suppose that the overall response, which is the highest level, is God's in control.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's true.
That would be the logical conclusion.
You can't argue with that.
No, but that would be the logical conclusion to what you've presented. No, because if each response is wrong in that moment, there is no response that you could really give other than actually it's all b'dei shamayim.
Yeah, but I'm kind of reading that each response was right, even though that's not the literal interpretation in the Chumash itself. I think the fact that the Jerusalem Talmud shares these approaches is showing certain sympathy with them.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone got any questions for Rabbi Miller based on what he presented or said? They've all gone quiet over there.
Could I just come out with another advert, actually? Because Rabbi Chaim has written more than one translation of the Chumash. And can I just show you this one? Which which is, I find, excellent because it's a more modern translation where it gives you biographies of the characters and bits of Kabbalah and frequently asked questions and this type of thing, which I find make it exceptionally readable. More so than the other one, which is more the professional man's Chumash. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I don't think David gets commission either.
No, I even had to pay. He didn't even give me a free one. I had to pay for it.
We're from the same mutual ancestor. I mean, he's
That's right.
my mother's first cousin, so
Yeah.
blood.
Has anyone else got any comments or questions for Rabbi Miller? No, I think it's all gone quiet. Thank you very much. That was a very beautiful explanation, and for me personally, a lot of food for thought. Maybe to understand and analyze how we respond to adversity,
Yes.
and how probably it's probably a bit of all of that goes through the thought process if we're doing it properly.
Yes.
But there's what to think about there. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and as we say here in London, I hope you have a meaningful fast. and even it is the hardest day of the year in many people's books, because it's not natural to want to be depressed and to be sad and to feel anguish and pain. But that's part of our national obligation to be able to do that. So Be'ezrat Hashem, we should all make it meaningful and maybe think about some of these things throughout the day, because although Bnei Yisrael have faced adversity, all the way through the centuries, we're here today proudly and strongly, and with God's help, we will continue to be here forever.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you very much. Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Thank you for joining us. We do appreciate it.
All the best.
Bye.
Okay.
By the way, Chaim, your parents couldn't get on.
Are you serious?
No, I just phoned them. So if Rabbi Levine has recorded it, so maybe you can get a recording of
Yes.
it. You
Okay.
can give it to Mum and Dad, okay?
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
Okay. Lovely to see you.
Lovely. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
knowledgeable.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks very much.
Thank you.